For Georgia Southern men's basketball, speaking of cancellations, Thursday, thought you were going to be heading down to Troy, Alabama to see our buddy Barry McKnight and get some mothers.
We don't play on Thursdays anymore, apparently.
No. Well, we didn't play on Saturdays until...
And South didn't play on Saturdays, so we finally decided to scrap that. We ended up playing on Saturday.
I realized that we were giving JT some guff last week of them not playing on Saturdays. I'm walking to my truck after this. I'm like, wait a minute, we haven't played on a Saturday either. But we both rectified that situation.
That's just where we are right now, unfortunately.
But didn't have to face a Scott Cross team that we were talking about last week is much improved and really on the track that they thought they were going to be, but that one gets canceled on Thursday. You turn the attention to South Alabama that was riding the high of knocking off Georgia State on national television on ESPN2 on that Thursday in the Mitchell Center. And then you go in to face the Richie Riley squad. 73-67 is the final score. South Alabama defeats Georgia Southern, but had to come back from a double-digit deficit in the second half. Made it a game where at times you didn't necessarily think it might have been.
First of all, okay with not having to go play Troy on the road, even though Trojan Arena is one of the gems of this league. It opened 10 years ago, but it still looks practically new. Yeah. But when Troy hopefully comes to Hander later this year, Georgia Southern's won 7 straight against Troy here, so maybe that'll be a chance to make that all better.
Come on, Barry.
But like we talked about with Coach Berg on the Cutwater Spirits Countdown and Tip-Off on Saturday, it's been stop and go, and it's been tough to establish any kind of rhythm because for 2 straight weeks, the Eagles have been prepping for a Thursday opponent that they never saw.
That's true.
Now, beat Arlington last Saturday, which was an outstanding game. Turned out to be a really good win because Arlington just lost its second league game. They've only one of 3 in the league on the men's side that have played all 6 conference games. But even this week, having all that attention on Troy, Wednesday morning, gone, no game. So having to shift gears, getting rid of that scout for Troy, and trying to rapidly install a South Alabama scout. And it's Georgia Southern's longest bus trip in whatever the sport, the way that we have the travel structure.
For now.
The way that we have our travel structure, thankfully, because Little Rock's bust here, ULM's bust here. And anyway.
I wonder how many of the new schools that we'll bust to.
Maybe Southern Miss, but outside of that, the other 3 in the East, you'd have to fly to them. Just too far.
Oh, don't say you have to, but yeah.
Norfolk, Harrisonburg, Huntington, those are not easy gets.
No. I'm not saying it'd be fun. I'm just saying don't say you have to.
But baseball bust to Southern Miss in 2018 for that 3-game series.
Where Frank was looking for Brett Favre the entire time.
I don't think he ever found it.
I don't think he did either. Anyway.
But for the Eagles, longest bus trip, they went the sleeper route, which the team voted on. The team enjoyed it coming back from, well, they didn't enjoy it, but they actually felt like they got some rest and recuperation following the Morehead State trip, where it was a 10-hour bus ride home after the loss to those Eagles out in Kentucky during non-conference play. But having to go there, spend most of Friday traveling, earlier tip on Saturday, not too early, but yeah, granted, that was bumped a half hour because the women's game, shoving our tip-off a little bit later. And it felt like that there was some offensive frustration because the Eagles did not shoot it well in the first half. They missed their final 9 tries from 3. They got down by 13 points 3 minutes into the second half. But for about a 5-minute stretch midway through, they were in position to win because they scored, I think it was a 15-3 run, erased their biggest deficit since Brian Burke took over, had a 3-point lead, but then South Alabama switched to his own. Georgia Southern had trouble probing that. They ended up missing 10 of their final 11 shots. South put together a 10-0 run, and they made enough free throws to win it by 6. It followed the script that most of these games do between these two. Somebody gets a big lead, mostly double digits. The other side comes back, and then the team that led in the first place ends up making enough free throws at the end to win. It's almost how every game between the two has gone since Georgia Southern joined the Sun Belt. The Mitchell Center has been a very tough place for the Eagles to win at ever since they joined the league. I was really impressed with South Alabama's athleticism. And for Georgia Southern, not having Prince Toyambi because of COVID protocol, the hope is he is good for this weekend against the Carolinas. Caden Archie's been playing banged up with that ankle. Kamari Brown's left knee hasn't been 100%. His minutes were a little bit limited. And you got Elijah McCadden back off COVID protocol because he missed the Arlington game. He did not start, but he played really well in the second half. He had 17 of his 19 after halftime. Third career double-double, came up with a career-high 11 rebounds. But you just felt like if Georgia Southern could have converted a couple of more of those opportunities from in close, it would have been a much different game.
Turn the attention to the Carolinas coming in on Thursday. We'll have the band back together since women's basketball only plays one game. I'll actually get to see you for a game.
You saw me last Saturday.
That's true. Meh.
And semantics.
Yeah, whatever. The Coastal Carolina coming in on Thursday, 7 p.m. the tip-off inside Hanner Fieldhouse. It's a Chanticleer team, 9-8 overall, 1-4 in conference play. Again, they've had to deal with cancellations throughout the Sun Belt Conference slate, but you talked about it, a tough weekend for them, losing at Appalachian State 61-60. You make that drive back to Conway, South Carolina, which is not a fun one. Fell in overtime 84-76 to Appalachian State in Conway in the second part of that game. It hasn't necessarily gone the way for Cliff Ellis and his squad the last couple of weeks, but still a pretty talented Coastal Carolina team.
You were with me for one of the Coastal home games last year because you had a cancellation on your side, so you were there for that Saturday game.
I was.
You were there for the Elijah McCadden three in the final second game for that win.
I did. I was there.
So let's hope we can get some kind of that magic back.
Correct. Maybe we have to go back to the other side of the floor. Get our stage back. I really want our stage back.
Where is that stage?
I don't know, but I need to find it.
I think that this Coastal team is better than its 9-8 record. They don't seem to play a whole lot on the road unless they're going to the Bahamas for a multi-team event. Leave it to Cliff Ellis. If he's leaving, of course he's going to go to Florida or the Bahamas. That's just how Cliff Ellis is going to roll. You're not going to tell him it's not. But they don't play very much away from Conway and true road games. They're 0-4 on the road this year. I say that, but a year ago was the same idea. They got off to a great start. They ended up going 18-8, which is their best season since joining the Sun. But their first road victory was here last year. It was on a Friday night. Game was bumped to ESPN2 because I believe it was South Alabama and Georgia State. They got postponed, so they needed an extra game. Move hours in. Unfortunately, Coastal got the win 79-62. Very next day, we talked about McCadden's buzzer beater. 61-58 was the final. Georgia Southern then went on COVID pause themselves and lost the one game up in Conway. The one thing that makes this Coastal team different, no Devontae Jones.
Yeah.
Player of the year last year, did everything for them. He averaged 3 steals a game in addition to the 21 points per game. They tried to replace it a little bit. They get Rudy Williams, the transfer from Kansas State. He's averaging about 13 points per game. You begin on the inside with Hassan Mustafa, one of the league's best big men, and Mike Bellato brought this up in his comments on Zoom before the season began. In this wave of positionless basketball, it's nice to see the Sun Belt have so many teams with dedicated big men. Of course, he's got one of the best anywhere in Norshad Omier, who's the preseason player of the year. But for Mustafa, 6'9", 250 from Egypt, he's averaging 15 and 10. That's a double-double. He's averaging.
Oh, yeah.
Numbers have gone down a little bit since the start of conference play. It seems that he's either crushing you or he's invisible. And if you can get them into transition defense, you can get him out of the game because he's not great at running the floor, and Coastal has troubles getting back. A year ago, what made the difference for them is their defense. They led the league in multiple defensive categories. They were top 30 nationally in multiple categories. This year, they're giving up 38% from the field. That's number one in the league, giving up just 65 points per game overall. They get it on you because they confuse you.
Yeah.
And the one thing about Cliff Ellis, when he speaks, you're not going to hear the phrase, man, I've never seen that before, because he's been coaching for 47 years. So I don't think there's anything he hasn't seen. But with all that knowledge, he's able to drop in the junk zone defense. They're going to be a man team. You'll see a 2-3, a 1-3-1, triangle and 2, box and 1, simply to confuse you. When they do that, they give up a lot of threes, and to Georgia Southern's credit, some of their best three-point performances since Coastal joined the league have been against the Chanticleers, but it's their thought that you can start hot, but eventually all those threes are going to stop falling. When they do, they love to get into transition offense. They run the floor really well, up-tempo team. They're 1-4 in conference play. They beat ULM to start by 30. And you thought, oh, okay, 94-64 first conference game. Everybody else is in trouble. They've lost their last 4, 2 by a point and 1 in overtime. So the margin for them being maybe as good as 4-1 as opposed to 1-4, razor thin.
Yeah, and the thing that really stood out to me seeing them last year and seeing them a couple of times was the fact that their offense runs through Ibrahim Adiba. I mean, you're looking at 6, almost 7 assists per game He was, I think, 18th, 19th nationally a year ago.
Yeah.
He's in the top 10 this year for right now. He is somebody that, and it's weird to say somebody at 6'6" is where the offense runs through, but he is pretty impressive when you see him live.
A year ago, he led the league in assists, and he wasn't the point guard.
Yeah.
Devontae Jones was the point guard. When he touched the ball, it was Devontae Jones's ball. He had one of the higher usage rates in the country. He got to the free throw line a ton, was better than 84%, so he was able to average 21 a game because he converted almost every available scoring opportunity. Deba has gone back to his natural point guard position. You say 6'6", you don't see very many 6'6" point guards anywhere, much less in the Sun Belt. Almost 7.5 assists per game in conference play. He just does everything. He doesn't score a lot, but he doesn't need to because his fingerprints are all over a box sheet.
Yeah.
When you realize how many points he's not only responsible for giving Coastal, but with as good as he is on defense, how much he is helping stop the other side score.
So Thursday it'll be Coastal Carolina inside Hanner Fieldhouse, and then Georgia Southern men's basketball will turn their attention 3 p.m. on Saturday to the Appalachian State Mountaineers coming in to Hanner Fieldhouse, and a lot of the same names you've heard for
all of them.
Yeah.
Not one guy lost to the transfer portal, not one guy brought in from the transfer portal. This is basically the same team that we put together for our prep last year.
Yeah. Justin Forrest is going to be the guy that you talk about a lot, but you look up and down this sheet, it's all the same names. All of them.
It is a blue out on Saturday.
Ooh.
So if you have not seen that, wear your blue. It's a rivalry game against Appalachian State. Forrest is one of the most dangerous players in this league, even though his offense has been down the last 2 years because he's been mostly coming off the bench. Different philosophy changing over because he was recruited initially and played under Jim Fox. Different system under Dustin Kearns. It's worked because they went to the NCAA tournament last year for the first time in 21 years.
Good for Harrison.
Forrest's numbers are down, but still lethal, shooting the basketball. If he touches the ball, he's going to try to get his points. That hasn't changed. Michael Almonacci, who ran through the conference tournament last year, had 32 in the title game against Georgia State, was the most outstanding player. His numbers are down a little bit, but a three-point gunner. You cannot leave him alone. He runs this team. He is the starting point guard. The guy that has finally taken the step forward, and this is very similar to the conversation we had for Arlington, how we always thought that David Azor could be the kind of player he is now, and he's second in the league in scoring. Adrian Delp is one of the league's best players.
Yeah.
He was always one of the better athletes, one of the better slashers, one of the better defenders, but in terms of his offense, so streaky, especially from three-point territory. He's not streaky anymore. He shoots more threes than anybody in the league. He makes more threes than anybody in the league. His defense has gotten better. He's scoring better than 16 a game, which is fourth in the conference coming into the weekend. He is now not somebody that you're not worried if you're going to get the points. You just have to worry on the other side how many. Scored 39 in a game earlier this year against Vermont. He had 29 against ULM. He has become the guy that App thought he could be when they recruited him 5 years ago.